Okay, so when I call your name, you come, you have 1 minute to present your poster, which means that at 2 minutes I'll kick you out. What? Yes, it should be, yeah.
Oh, we're going to stand there? Or here?
No, you come here, it's nicer. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so we start with Samar Al-Qatari.
Because I'm first, I get extra time, right? 10 more
You've
seconds.
already lost 5 seconds.
Oh, no. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Samar. I'm a postdoc here, and I'm going to be telling you about some of the work I did in which, in a very simple model, the simplest, arguably, model of mechanics, which is a disordered mechanical network, you can ascribe notions typically associated with biological evolvable systems, like notions of function and fitness and a mutation, and in which we were able to generate complete fitness landscapes and study in ensembles of networks, thousands, the statistics and mechanics of function switch. How do you evolve to acquire new function? And with that, we've been able to recapitulate a lot of the surprising characteristic features of biological evolution and discover new features. So hopefully I can tell you more about that.
Perfectly in time. Good. Next. Lara Braverman. Oh, sorry. Okay. I'll be staying here. What's going on? Oh, yeah.
So I'm Lara.
Sorry.
I'm a grad student at Harvard. So as maybe people have mentioned in a lot of the talks, active particles and kind of how they're related to biological systems and also synthetic systems. But one of the things that active particles have that passive Brownian particles don't have, or passive particles don't have, is that they break time reversal symmetry. And so one of the consequences of this is that if you take a bath of active particles and you put them in a bath with like an asymmetric potential, spatially asymmetric potential, you can get currents and long-range density modulations. And all this takes is taking a particle and having it have a preferred orientation. And this has been found before, but this has been done in flat space. But if we think about a lot of the examples people have brought up of active particles, including this example of nymph locus, which I think someone talked about locus earlier, but also bacteria infecting scales of fish and other active particles, they exist on curved surfaces, right? They're going over dunes. And so a question can be, how does this like long-range scale-free density modulation get affected by curvature? And that's the question I'm going to try to answer by taking cones and hyperbolic cones, which have Gaussian curvature, and seeing how the long-range density modulation is actually enhanced for negative curvature and suppressed for positive curvature.
Okay, thank you. Sabrina, yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sabrina. I'm a graduate student at Harvard as well, and I'm glad that Laura comes before me in the alphabet because she just did a lot of the hard work for me in explaining the ratchet effect. So it's known that when you place asymmetric objects in an active bath, that this can lead to scale-free density modulation and also scale-free forces between passive bodies in an active bath. And in our work, we study objects that are symmetric on average, but are allowed to have non-equilibrium fluctuations that lead to shape fluctuations that can give rise to instantaneous ratchet currents. And it turns out the key message is that if you place these objects with these non-equilibrium fluctuations in some underlying medium with short-range correlations, this can actually give rise to scale-free correlations on the passive system. And then this can in turn lead to scale-free fluctuation-induced forces that decay with an exponent of 2d plus 1. And so I've highlighted two examples of where this could happen. One is a passive system with a fluctuating localized potential, and the second is symmetric quench potentials in an active bath where the active particles are interacting. And so, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Dan. I'm a grad student at Berkeley, and today I'm going to tell you about non-equilibrium systems for chemical reaction networks. And these things are thermodynamically consistent, so fluxes are given by like chemical potential gradients, and reaction rates are given by like differences in chemical potentials. But the system's open, so you have to, and certain species are held at fixed chemical potential at all points in space and time, so you have to flow in or remove species continuously. In certain steady states, ones that are detailed balanced, it's equilibrium, and the structure of the Jacobian is the exact same as we know. But you can kind of tune the topology of these reaction networks to get another class of steady states where the thermodynamic structure is retained except Onsager reciprocity is broken. And so when you break Onsager reciprocity but otherwise keep the thermodynamic structure, you basically can get like oscillatory instabilities where like linearized fluctuations will show like oscillatory growth. But because you have the thermodynamic structure, you always have the free energy as a Lyapunov functional, so you get oscillatory instabilities that necessarily saturate to a stationary free energy minimizing state. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nicolas Heller?
That's not.
Hi, yes, I'm a graduate student at UC Berkeley. I'll be presenting our work on traveling waves across heterogeneous landscapes. So I look at the FKPP equation, and instead of, well, including the stochasticity of finite number effects, what happens when the growth rate itself is quench disordered or spatiotemporally oscillating. And what seems to be the case is that the interaction between the finite number effects and the effective cutoff theory that comes out of stochastic form of the equation and the heterogeneity leads to these large oscillations that increase with system size. And there could be generic transitions between fluctuations dominated by stochasticities and fluctuations dominated by heterogeneity. And these fluctuations are between different classes of traveling waves. Some of them might be familiar to like pushed and pulled, but you can in fact get extra layers of localization and sloshing of the genealogical dynamics into supercooled regimes. So it's generally very challenging and open problem, so I'm looking forward to discussing it with all of you.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Oleg Kogan. So we've already heard a few talks about, XY type model or / Kuramoto model, where you have internal phase dynamics. And then there were a few talks about swarming-like situations, like the previous talk. And so there are systems that combine both. So these are called swarmolators, which are basically oscillators that swarm. So the internal phase degree of freedom affects spatial motion, and vice versa, the spatial motion affects the dynamics of internal phase degree of freedom. And so naturally this leads to interesting collective states. When you add time delay to this collective states, you get some other more interesting collective states. What happens basically is you have interesting transients that die down, and the system appears to be quiescent. But actually it's not quiescent, there is still some sort of aging going on. And we're curious, what's that aging, what's that residual motion? And basically it is the dynamics of defects. So these are coordination number defects. Blue particles have 7 nearest neighbors, red particles have 5 nearest neighbors. And over time, these defects go through these types of processes. You have mergers, you have pair productions, and then you have migration to the boundary. And so aging takes place through these processes, and over time, you get basically fewer and fewer defects in the system. And these are basically topological defects, because if you look at the phase of the hexatic order parameter, you can see that this cluster right here, the bottom right, it's has a topological charge of -1. So long story short, you have aging through these defect processes. Please come see my poster. Thanks.
Thanks. Itamar Colville.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Itamar Colvin. I'll present a poster. I'm presenting a poster here, the work of my student Ibrahim Abu Hijle on the active flows of stiff integrant filaments. So many environments, in biology, in material science, are crowded and are made of entangled, slender objects, right? So we wanted to see how active flows can fluidize, or how active flows drive this kind of materials. So we merged two model systems. One is one that is very well characterized microtubule-based active matter, and the other are bacterial flagella that are stiff helical rods of different shapes. What we see when we compare different shapes is that with straight filaments, the active flows that microtubule flows progress pretty much the same in different concentrations, but with helical rods, we see a breakdown of the flow patterns. They resist the active stresses, and finally they also reach an arrested state. So I'm happy to discuss this more with you, so please come to my poster and I'll see you later.
Thank you. So we have Cheng Long.
Hi everyone. My poster presentation is theory of liquid crystal ground states on hyperbolic cones. The interplay between geometry and liquid crystal orientational field is quite common in nature. People found that positive gas in curvature repels negative topological defects, and negative gas in curvature repels positive defects. But the question is whether the geometric interaction, the geometric repulsion is symmetrical between positive and negative gas in curvature. Cones have positive gas in curvature concentrated at the apex, and hyperbolic cones have negative gas in curvature at the apex. So we used them as minimal geometric model to answer this question, and we demonstrated that the repulsion from negative gas in curvature is generally weaker than that from positive gas in curvature. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Jessica Metzger.
Hi, so I'm Jessica. So recently, non-equilibrium mixtures like non-reciprocal and two-temperature mixtures have received a lot of attention, mostly for their rich phase and pattern-forming behavior. But it's important to also understand their disordered phases. Now, the disordered phase of a non-equilibrium mixture has to be described by field dynamics of this form, but it's easy to show through an elementary power counting analysis that all the nonlinearities in the disordered phase are irrelevant. So the large-scale physics should be described by the linear model, which is actually quite boring. All the correlations should be short range and so on, which kind of explains why they haven't received that much attention. But when you do simulations of, for example, a two-temperature mixture in 1D, you see long-range three-point correlations. So I can explain how that happens if you come see my poster.
Thank you. Hannah Mir.
Hi everybody, my name is Hannah. I'm a grad student at Berkeley, working with Mike DeWeese. So this right here, this is Patrick Zolkowski or Gavin Crooks, or any of these theorists who are working on a single particle and trying to find the optimal protocol for a single particle in a harmonic trap with these control parameters. And this over here is me all sad, because for them, they have this really nice math that works out and they can get these perfect analytical solutions. Unfortunately for me, that's not the case when you start looking at more than one particle. So I numerically outputted the optimal protocols for a bunch of particles, and then we find out that they're actually kind of the same, almost the same. So this could be you on my poster, learning more.
Thank you. Lila Sarfati.
Hi, my name is Lila Sarfati and I come from Université Paris-Cité. So the question of how to derive interface dynamics starting from mesoscopic field theory has been studied since the 80s. So many different methods have been developed for equilibrium systems. And since the 2000s, there's a simplified route that has settled as the most popular. That essentially assumes that you can neglect everything that's, I don't know how to, well, you can neglect everything that's not translational fluctuations. And it's been since then also applied out of equilibrium in driven, active, or shared systems. The problem is that this route is actually inconsistent. From the same starting point, you can have contradictory results, including the correct results, interestingly. And so in my poster, that's what I discussed, and also I introduce a when-controlled route that we have developed that accounts for both translational and bulk fluctuations, and it's systematic in both in and out of equilibrium. So I would be happy to explain more.
Thank you. Ahish Shrestha.
Hello, I'm Ahish Shrestha from Northwestern University. So my poster is going to be on non-equilibrium flow patterns that emerge in active charge systems. So the motivation behind the study is that we have living systems that functionalize fluxes of ions in confined environments that can produce directed transport and signaling behaviors. And the question is, can directed flow of charged fluids, just like, for example, simple electrolytes, be achieved through a boundary mechanism? So it's been known you can induce bulk flows from applied external electric fields and through bulk ionic gradients and also applied pressures. But we ask here, in the absence of these external fields, can we induce bulk flows through purely ionic fluxes at the boundary? So we will explore the physical basis of these active and charged confinement, where you can induce directional bulk flows. And so, yes, that's what. Thank you.
Thank you. Neha Taghi.
Hi, my name is Neha and I'm from Northwestern University. In this work, we have used a blend of machine learning and physics theory to design intrinsically disordered protein, which are a class of protein that lack any fixed secondary or tertiary structure, and thus they span an ensemble of different conformation. And using this framework, we have designed this IDP to perform a diverse class of function, ranging from one-dimensional sensor responding to various physiochemical cues, molecular logic gates, showing multiphasic condensates, or showing recruitment. I'll be happy to discuss more about it. Please stop by my poster.
Thank you. So, the last poster, which hopefully...
Hello, I am Divyaj. I'm a local grad student here at UCSB in the groups of Christina Market and Sebastian Streichen. I work on cardiac organoids, the one that you see here. And our heart, like any other muscle in our body, basically creates these forces via muscles. And the key question that we are trying to ask is, how does this macroscopic alignment and arrangement of muscles comes about from the macroscopic forces? We made a very simple model with insights from macromatter theory, of course, which has very interesting emergent properties like domains and like these domain walls and hysteresis. And we actually were able to see that our predictions also hold true for these cardiac organoids as well. And I would love to talk more about this on my poster. Thank you.
And so the important information is when we can talk to the people in front of the poster. So tomorrow and on Wednesday, there are receptions before the dinner, which are next to the posters. So it's a perfect time to grab a drink and then come back and talk to people. The posters will be displayed the full week. So any lunch break, any coffee break, and so for additional information. And finally, there are a couple of students who couldn't make it today, but will be arriving tonight. And so we'll have three very short flash talks between the two morning talks for this last poster. Let's thank all of them again. And so lunch will be served where we had coffee break in probably around 10 minutes or so. Thank you. Yeah, bring your name tag, otherwise no food.